A couple of days ago, my girlfriend came up to me and showed me a TikTok that she saw where a mother discussed one of the things that she had to budget for with her children. And that was deciding whether to go for the heavier duty Kevlar backpack, because a cheaper bulletproof backpack couldn't protect against an AR-15 round. Take a moment to take the gravity of that statement in. It's absolutely shocking to see the extent of where gun violence has taken our society in the past 15 years, and it really is even more so disturbing to see how little progress has been made since school shootings have been continuously making news headlines. It feels like a weekly thing to see on social media the announcement of yet another massacre taking place at a school, where helpless children are gunned down by a ruthless sociopath who marks their legacy in history for all the wrong reasons. Columbine, Virginia Tech, Sandy Hook, Parkland, Uvalde. All should be familiar phrases. What were once just locations have essentially been transformed to have an entirely different meaning by one single event. One single day, one single morning, where the trash men come to pick up garbage, trains and subways continuously run, and parents say goodbye to their children, expecting to pick them back up on their way home from work. One single day, one single morning, is all the time that it takes for a community to become unrecognizable, and the title of their location transforms to the title of an event that will remain in the hearts of those impacted by it, while the country mourns for those who have been lost. Until about a week or so, and then people get on with their lives. That right there is the most shocking part, how easy it is for the media to lose interest in a topic as heartbreaking as this. An article by The Atlantic describes the tragic reality of the way that media covers these in such a horrifyingly shallow and temporary way. Media coverage of these events tends to follow a familiar script. You do the day story, then you do the victim stories, and then you profile the shooter. By the next week, in most cases, the news cycle has already moved on. After all the suffering that communities go through after one of these traumatic events, a week later, the attention dies, the donations dry up, and the overall attitude from the rest of the country seems a bit like Southern hospitality. Acting all warm and caring at the surface, though once the end of their attention span is met, they latch on to the next heartbreaking tragedy that happens elsewhere in the country. The rest of the population moves on, while it's left to those communities to pick up their shattered pieces and start to rebuild. While it may not seem like I have much of a connection to this issue being the 20-year-old college student that I am, I do certainly remember that day like it was yesterday. Being from a small town in Connecticut, one cold day in December of 2012 lives in the back of my memory, and once in a while, I am haunted by the memories of what was to become known as the Sandy Hook school shooting. Newtown, Connecticut is about an hour drive north from where I am, yet that day sent ripples of fear throughout the surrounding area, sending most nearby schools into lockdown, mine being one of them. As news hit the rest of the nation of an attack like this for the first time in nearly 15 years, all parents felt the same horrid feeling. What if this was my kid? On the morning of December 12, 2012, the town of Newtown, Connecticut was shattered by the news that Sandy Hook Elementary School had been held up by a ravaged gunman who had gone on to kill 28 people, including 20 first graders aged 6 and 7 years old. Among them were 6 adults, which were 4 teachers, the principal, and the school psychologist. The gunman, who would come to be known as Adam Lanza, killed himself as police arrived at the scene. 26 innocent people had their lives ripped from them. 20 first graders. That name still haunts me to this day, and I still remember doing projects in my 6th grade writing class about what may have caused this to happen and what could be done to prevent future incidents like this from happening again. I remember that one of the main causes that we as a class of 6th graders came up with was that the US had too much violence in our media, and that violent video games were a big contributor to violent behavior, as it was a detail that Adam Lanza played violent video games frequently. Part of the project was to make up an experiment to test your theories. I guess it was easier to let 6th graders test the impacts of video games on us rather than to tell us the complex relationship that this nation has with the firearm industry and lobbyist involvement with the NRA. So why has nothing changed? Why is it possible for 10 years to go by after this pivotal moment, yet we see nothing has changed, and it's still happening, almost on a weekly basis? A large part of the issue lies in the legal obstacles set forth by the National Rifle Association. The NRA lobbies American politics through campaign donations, direct lobbying efforts, and grassroots organizing. According to Open Secrets, the NRA spent over $10 million on lobbying in 2020 alone, that of which went 100% to Republican candidates. The organization has been successful in blocking or weakening gun control laws in many states, in most cases making it extremely hard to receive necessary votes to pass laws regarding firearm legislation. It uses its large membership base to mobilize advocating for pro-gun policies very well, using strength in numbers tactics. The NRA's framing around the debate of gun rights and its portrayal of gun ownership as a fundamental right have helped to shape the country's gun laws and policies since its inception. So if you're wondering what this means, yes, the organization is literally paying politicians to accept and promote their agenda. This is how US politics works. The debate on whether having firearms readily available in the United States has any correlation to the influx of gun violence or not is a slippery slope, with many views coming from a vast array of perspectives. Though the fundamental question still stands to be, should we have more guns to protect from more guns, or have less guns in circulation, eliminating the threat altogether? While the latter may appear to be the no-brainer way to go, the US's history has ingrained the idea that Americans should have a right to defend themselves. While safety from the frontier may have been a much more prevalent issue back when our nation's laws were first written, it is no debate that we live in a very different America today. Nowadays, there are resources set up to deal with your average dangers. A fight breaks out in the street, police are called to break it up. A bear gets into your yard, animal control is called. A burglar breaks into your home, the police are going to take at least a minute or two to get there, so what are you supposed to do in the meantime? And what happens if they have a gun and are threatening you or your family with it? These kinds of situations are what make this issue such a gray area. According to the 2021 Global Peace Index, which measures the level of peace and safety in countries around the world, the United States ranked 121 out of 163 countries, taking into account various factors, including levels of violence, crime, political instability, and the availability of weapons. A paradox can be found here. On one hand, the United States is one of the more dangerous places to live, so people should have a way to defend themselves, right? Though on the other hand, the people that voice for an increase in gun control argue that having less guns in circulation, as well as increasing deterrence to obtain them, could lead to a reduction in gun violence, including homicides, mass shootings, and suicides. They point to countries with stricter gun laws and lower rates of gun ownership, such as Japan and the United Kingdom. Japan's strict firearm regulations have kept the number of gun-related deaths incredibly low. 9 firearm deaths in 2018, for example, compared to the 39,740 in the US in 2018, including 24,432 by suicide and 13,958 by homicide, according to a 2020 report from the Johns Hopkins Center for Gun Violence Solutions. If there's anything that can be obtained by living in the US, it's the notion that we live in a hostile climate. With politics taking the route that they have over the past 2 decades, it's surprising how safe we may feel, though many don't feel the same. 2 big things happened in gun culture in 2008 that saw a great rise in growth from the firearm industry. One was the establishment of the idea that instead of protection against thy neighbor, one should focus on protection against tyranny, an idea set forth by the Supreme Court, who ruled that the Second Amendment was established to entitle citizens to a gun as a means to protect themselves against tyranny. This set a feeling of unease upon the population, as it was put forth in words that the democracy that they knew could be swept up from under them at any given moment. The second was that 5 months later, Barack Obama would be elected president. People panicked, thinking that said tyranny was just over the horizon, because they thought that he would be the one to take away their guns. And how did people panic, you may wonder?
Mr. Obama's the best gun salesman on the planet.
Every time he talks, he drives up sales.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about how your sales have been under the Obama administration? Is he really the best gun salesman in America?
We think he is, yeah.
Such an increase in tension between the government and citizens led to an increase in mistrust, resulting in people wanting to have a means to defend themselves against the worst that could come. Instability is in many ways another part of our culture. While the issue of gun accessibility and regulation is a large portion of why the US stands out in terms of mass shootings, it is important to note that we are not the only country with loose regulations when it comes to firearms. In Switzerland, it's possible for anyone over the age of 18 to legally purchase a gun, even without a license. Though they stand at having only 214 gun-related deaths in 2017, a number actually going down for them, compared to the United States' 39,773. So why is it just us? An additional cause that is unique to the US is that of mental health. It is no secret that an effective or fast-paced, pressured way of life is a decline in mental health. According to the National Institute of Mental Illnesses, 1 in 5 people suffer from some kind of mental illness in the US. While it's important to note that not all school shooters have diagnosed mental illness, some do show signs of mental distress, such as depression, anxiety, or other common signs of mental illness. Research has shown that individuals with mental illnesses are much more likely to be victims of violence than perpetrators of violence. However, some individuals with certain mental health conditions, such as those with untreated schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, may be at risk of committing acts of violence. Studies and analysis have found that a significant portion of individuals who commit acts of mass violence, including school shootings, have a history of mental illness or exhibit signs of mental distress. A 2018 study published in the journal JAMA Psychiatry found that nearly 1 in 3 mass shooters had a history of mental illness, and approximately 1 in 10 had been diagnosed with a psychotic disorder. Additionally, a report by the U.S. Secret Service and Department of Education on targeted school violence found that more than 75% of school shooters had demonstrated concerning behavior prior to the attack, including mental health concerns, interpersonal conflicts, and academic problems. While it almost seems like an untreatable portion of the problem, one of the most plausible solutions is to address mental issues before they get to the point of driving someone to committing mass murder. The U.S. lacks in a traversable healthcare system, simply stated. The one section that could play a key role here is how most insurance plans don't cover any treatment for mental health services. Cost is frequently a deterrent for many people to get treated for any issues they have, whether it be before or after a diagnosis. When you have a system that allows for mentally unstable people to be around firearms and even legally purchase them, it's no wonder that this is a national crisis. Reform for this could help to identify and treat individuals who may be at risk of committing acts of violence, preventing it from happening at the core of the issue.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Tonight, a targeted attack in Tennessee, a scene that has become all too common in America, a mass shooting. This time at a private Christian grade school in Nashville. We've just learned more about the 6 victims, the 3 children, all 9 years old, the 3 adults in their 60s. One of them, Catherine Kuntz, was the head of the school. The other adults, a substitute teacher and a custodian. Well, tonight, police have identified the shooter as a 28-year-old woman who previously attended the school and left behind a manifesto. Police confronted and quickly killed the shooter. These pictures of young kids holding hands to evacuate the school are reminiscent of the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School 10 years ago. And this heartbreaking photo, a young girl terrified on a bus on her way to be reunited with her family at a nearby church. Our local affiliate WTVF says those kids arrived to their parents singing. It's all a chilling reminder about the leading cause of death for America's children, guns. For decades, it was car accidents that were the main cause. Well, not anymore. Since 2020, firearms overtook crashes as the #1 cause of death for kids. Police said the shooter was heavily armed, prepared to do even more harm.
Reminiscent of the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School 10 years ago. Why? Why is it that this issue is still happening? How is it possible to have one of the wealthiest countries in the world, with leading education rates, leading literacy, and leading Medicare, to be so barbaric at its core? Why is it another thought that parents have to have when they drop off their child at school? Why is it a thought that kids have to have in the back of their minds when they sit down for their 10 a.m. math class? As if algebra isn't hard enough, they have to constantly be on their toes in case some lunatic comes in with an assault rifle and doesn't think twice. Why has the issue progressed from initially making parents reconsider the town and location that they live in, to now forcing parents to buy their child a bulletproof backpack? And no, not that bulletproof backpack, but the one that's strong enough to stop a .5.56 NATO round. Yes, the same bullet that the literal US military uses to caliber their weapons. It's almost as if society has come to the conclusion that if we can't stop it by now, we should just go outside of the norm and get little Johnny a bulletproof backpack, because that's easier than implementing political change. Are parents wrong, though? Because since 2012, minuscule change has been applied to the regulations of firearms. Audrey Hale, the shooter at the Covenant School, purchased both of the weapons used to kill children legally, despite having known mental illnesses and issues. So you tell me, are we going to have to continuously band-aid this problem with ridiculous temporary solutions, or can we put a stop to this once and for all? You as a parent can never be sure that it won't be your child next, and us as students can never be sure that this class won't be the one. So what more can be done? What more can the firearm industry ask from the American people? How many more times will we have to read about one more until enough is enough? How much longer will we have to suffer?